Hi, my name is Jessica Jowdy. I'm a sales engineer at InterSystems, and today I'm going to talk about how InterSystems HealthShare can help power your smart applications. So when we talk about being in healthcare technology, what are we trying to do? We're really trying to improve patient care. And in order to improve patient care, we're talking about how can we augment our existing practices, our existing knowledge base, our existing workflow to really do that. And that's really a data-driven task. Any kind of improvement to patient care requires you to have this this true source of data that underlies it. So if we're talking about, say, Smart on FHIR, for example, Smart on FHIR is this new technology that utilizes REST protocols to be able to expose these particular pieces of information in a patient's record to be used for some kind of use case or particular purpose. These applications are then given to clinicians, they're given to nurses, care managers, and patients themselves in the hopes that the data itself, in its most approachable form, can actually enlighten them and help them make informed clinical decisions. But if we're expecting these users to actually make decisions and use the information provided to them by these Smart on FHIR applications, we need to be convinced that the data itself is telling the whole story. So what exactly do I mean by that? Let's take, for example, a patient that has a chronic condition. This patient tends to go to multiple different acute care and ambulatory facilities. And so their data is spread out across all of these different organizations. We have, different EMRs for these organizations that don't know how to talk to each other, or they're using the same EMR but different instances. So in any case, our data is segregated. There are also instances where our data isn't even in an EMR. So if we're looking at, social service agencies or, home care agencies or even boutique specialty providers, they don't necessarily have EMRs to hold that data. So we have all these different, pools of data, and we have one FHIR application. And the question is, okay, so what exactly is our data feed? Are we pulling it, what are we considering our data feed? Are we gonna pick the data feed, the data source that has the most amount of information? Are we gonna pick what we think is the truest data, and then how do we define that? Or if we are considering pulling in data from all of these sources, how are we reconciling that across all of those organizations? How are we able to deduplicate that information to have one copy of it? How are we able to apply terminology management to it so that we have a single standard format like LOINC or ICD-9 where we have this optimized analytics as a result? So this ability, this aggregated, normalized, deduplicated record of information that extends to all components of a patient's record, from your laboratories, your hospitals, from the payer space, that aggregated, normalized, deduplicated record is what we call the community health record. And we find it to be the most comprehensive record because we're pulling from every organization that is contributing information to this patient record. So how exactly does this play with HealthShare? So the core of HealthShare is the ability to create this aggregated, normalized, deduplicated community health record. So we are able to connect with all these different practices, hospitals, in a variety of different formats. So, maybe we're taking in CCDs or CDA documents from practices, HL7 messages, we're taking in X12 claims information, we have FHIR resources coming in. These are coming in from different EMRs, they're coming in from different organizations that don't have EMRs. So InterSystems HealthShare, what it's able to do is take all of those different messaging frameworks and consolidate them into a single repository that's accessible. That data is then terminology mappings are then applied to that data. So, most of these organizations have local code sets that they're using. If you're combining data across organizations with different local code sets, you're not going to be able to do much from the analytics standpoint. So applying those terminology mappings to go to LOINC or ICD-9, and then doing the deduplication so that we only have one copy. And once we have that data available, the question is, okay, how do we want to expose that data? And from a HealthShare perspective, we can expose that in whatever way you want, but from a Smart on FHIR standpoint, we want to do that in FHIR bundles. So we're able to take that comprehensive medical record and expose it as a FHIR bundle to your Smart on FHIR application. So how exactly do we do that? So I'm going to jump to a slight demo here. So we're going to start with looking at our actual data model. So we use our experience in the HIE field and our partnerships with GE and the VA to come up with a standard internal data model to map all of our inbound HL7s, inbound CDAs, inbound FHIR to a single data format. So we also recognize that data may not fit in these categories, so we allow for extensions. So at Partners Healthcare, we added a genomics field here so that we can so that we could store their genomics information. So we have this standard data model that we convert everything into and store in our repository. And we also have, in addition to HealthShare, or in HealthShare, what we have are the transformations to go from your HL7, CDA, FHIR into this internal messaging format. So it's right out of the box and it's pretty easy to use. And everything is, of course, upgrade safe. So any additions you make to this data model will appear, post-upgrade. So how does this actually look? So if I'm a clinician and I'm looking to see information regarding a patient, say Mark Schilling, I can search for Mark Schilling. Now, typically what we do is we render this information in a clinician's native EMR. So there's patient and provider context sharing. There's not an additional search. It's all in their native workflow. But what I like to come here is because it shows our master patient index at work. So within HealthShare, we have a master patient index that allows you to uniquely identify patients across the community. So in this case, we have several different Mark Schillings with different MRNs, with different demographic information that our MPI was able to say, yes, this is the same person. We're able to pick and choose which data sources we want to serve up. In this case, I'm just going to serve up all of the data. So it's going to load. And what we see here is that aggregated, normalized, deduplicated information across all of those different data sources. We have a summary page to show the aggregated allergies and medications. I can click through some of these. For example, if I wanted to look at utilization, I would go to the Encounters tab. And we can see if we look down the facility, we are grabbing information from multiple different facilities and putting it in a single location. And we can do the same thing with all these other tabs. Interestingly enough, family, social, and medical history, we're making that discretized data from unstructured text coming from a variety of different sources, so we're able to make that available for any kind of analysis. And then once we have all this data together, it's okay, how do we want to use that information as it's all together? At one point in time, everyone was saying, we need more data, we need more data, we need more data, and now we have all of this data, and they're like, okay, so now what do I do with it? How do I filter this down to show what I need? So we worked with an ontology provider and came up with what we called clinographics, which is basically this filtered view of the entire comprehensive medical record specific to a particular chronic condition, such as, say, congestive heart failure or diabetes. So we enabled this at one of our clients to be all via FHIR resources, so all of the data specific to congestive heart failure is being exchanged within this application using that. So here I have all of the information regarding congestive heart failure, and now this is pulling data, once again, and I am trying to stress this, but it's being pulled from all of the different data source providers that are contributing information for this particular patient. So each data point is coming from a different facility, but it's all being put together on the same graph, and also corresponding medications are overlaid so that you could see, okay, this is how my weight is fluctuating as a result of my new medications. Same with BNP, and then ejection fraction is something that we're pulling out of unstructured text, so we're using our NLP framework in order to pull that information out and discretize it. We also have related medications, but all of this is driven by FHIR. So being able to communicate these parcels of information in a quick and easy format is crucial for this application. The other thing you can do when you aggregate all the data together is target gaps in care. If you know you have all the data, you know what's missing. So you can define clinical rules to basically say, okay, am I missing a vaccination for this patient? Is there an overdue lab? In this case, we're looking for missing diagnoses. So, there is a lot of evidence for this person having congestive heart failure. Here is my evidence for why this person has congestive heart failure. Now, the providers who are, working on this patient may not have had all this information. They may have only had portions of it spread across all of the different organizations, so they only saw, this myopic view of what was going on. So by bringing everything together, we can then say, okay, here's your gap in care, or here's your missing diagnosis. Can you adjudicate it? Can you say, this is true or false? And then it becomes part of that patient's medical record. So, how does this have to do with Smart on FHIR? So I talked about, in order for these applications to be really meaningful, we need to trust the data. We need to know that we have all of the data and the whole story and the whole picture for a patient. So I'm going to switch gears and look at a pediatric patient. And what I'm going to show is the standard pediatric dashboard, or the pediatric growth chart embedded within this clinical viewer, but being fed all of the data across all of the organizations. So if I pull up my pediatric patient, this is going to have a little bit of a different skin to it, and that's because we have the ability to customize our clinical viewer to show only important, relevant information, to make it have a look and feel of whatever organization is using it. So in this case, this is all of the physical examination information for this particular patient. The data is spread out across different organizations, but we can see that it's all in one single location. So then if I pop over to my growth chart, we'll see that we're able to embed those Smart on FHIR applications directly into our clinical viewer. And the data that's being fed into this Smart on FHIR application is that aggregated data coming from all of those organizations. Another thing to note is we also do consent management. So all of the data here has been consented to by the patient, and it can be from from a full MPI level, it could be on a facility-specific level, or it could be specific to a particular clinical information type. So maybe we want to block all behavioral health information, or maybe we want to block information regarding STDs and that kind of information. So to summarize, we've grabbed all this data in from HL7, from CDA. We were able to map it into a standard data model. We were able to normalize that information so that it was in a standard code set. We were able to deduplicate that information and then serve it back up as FHIR resources. So really the possibilities are endless as far as what kind of applications you can hook up to this. So in conclusion, what I would want to say is, you've built these Smart on FHIR applications to be insightful, to help individuals, whether they're providers or patients, understand their information and then act upon it. So you need to have confidence in the data that you're working with. So if you have HealthShare being that true data source that's feeding the back end of your Smart on FHIR applications, you can really have confidence that you have the full picture, that it's representative of the patient in context, and that you're really using the best products to power, your strong applications. So thank you.